the junior college meeting. My name is Beth Jones. I'm one of the counselors. I'll introduce my colleagues, Jess McCann and Kate Simmons. And we have a presentation tonight to take you through the college process. It can be daunting, but we are here to help you and have lots of resources along the way. So we're going to start off with a little sort of cartoonish kind of thing that we put together, and then I'll go over the agenda and we'll start to discuss some of the topics. There are resources on our guidance webpage we're going to refer to over and over again tonight. This PowerPoint presentation is available for you to print out if you have any questions, or hopefully you might even have it with you. So we're going to do an overview of what our junior group guidance program looks like. I'm going to speak about SAT testing, and then we're going to discuss college research, Naviance, establishing the criteria that's important to you and your student, identifying resources, visiting, you'll hear us say a million times, is so critical. The actual application process, the mechanics of how you actually apply to college, we're going to go over pretty quickly because we go over it in depth over and over again with the students. So we're just going to kind of go through the motions there. And also a college process timetable. I mean, this time next year, we've been meeting with juniors this week. And this time next year, you will have all got your college applications in the mail, and probably will have some acceptances and responses. So I think it's helpful to put it in perspective and kind of know what you should be doing now. And then if you just hold your questions till the end, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so just in case you don't know, we meet with small groups of students throughout the year. It's usually about 5 or 6 times. We're actually meeting with juniors this week. And some of the things we've covered so far is the first session was PSAT registration. We had many students take the PSATs, which is the practice version of the SATs. If you haven't taken them, that's okay. But it is something, it's a piece of the overall process that you need to start thinking about and kind of just timing. So then our second session was when we got the results of the PSAT scores, and we talked a great deal about SAT preparation and creating accounts to be ready to take the SATs. Next time, we'll be discussing something called the game plan, which is just a quick survey. Actually, that is something we did this week as well. Just to help students think about what do I want in a college? Do I want, Penn State where there's 35,000 kids, or do I want a Franklin and Marshall where there's 2,500 kids? So that's all part of it. We have some great resources with Naviance and the College Board to help with those searches. The fourth session will be the selecting courses for next year. This is always, students sort of look at us funny because at the end of this year, your official high school GPA will be your official high school GPA, okay? It will not change. But that being said, what you take and how you do as a senior can be really critical. I've seen it, time and time again. So, and then the last session towards the end of the year, we'll talk about the Common Application, what to do over the summer, and some scholarship opportunities, which is the Raise Me, that's a scholarship website. Okay, so we're meeting tonight to go over the overall process. After tonight, you'll be getting a letter in the mail, and starting in February, we will be happy to sit down with each and every one of you and your students and talk about their individual process and where they are and what they're thinking and what's realistic. And most of the time it's just an introductory kind of a thing, and if we need to meet again, we can do that as well. As I said, you'll get a letter. If you are a student athlete thinking about playing Division I or II sports, you should be registered with the NCAA, and please let us know that, because then we can get the athletic director or the coach involved in the college meeting. This is an important date to mark down. On April 24th, there will be a college night at Fox Lane High School, and that is about 200, maybe even more than that, college representatives that travel around the country talking about their different schools. In many cases, it will be the same representative that will come here to Brewster High School and might also be the person who is first looking at your application. So, the more contacts you can make with the school, the better. So that's an important night, and it'll help you kind of get you moving. Okay, so standardized testing. There are two major standardized tests, the SAT and the ACT. What I like to recommend, and other counselors have different opinions, but I like to recommend that juniors take both of those tests as juniors. The scores tend to be very comparable, but I do think the formatting and the wording can be very different. So I like to recommend that students take the SAT school and the ACT, and then they can decide, I'm going to take the ACT. Colleges will take either one, and then in most cases, students will take it again in the beginning of their senior year. Okay, so we offer the ACT in April and June here at Brewster High School. It is offered at other high schools. The SAT is, we offer that in May and June. Okay, so just sit down with the calendar, think about what makes sense. If you're taking some AP classes, I'd stay away from the May test. And there's also something up there called subject tests. They're individual SAT tests on individual subjects, U.S. history, chemistry, English, whatever it is. The more competitive colleges may require them, so that would be a conversation we should have now, because it's always best to take those tests while you're taking the class or soon after you've taken the class. There's lots of ways to prepare for SATs. I think, again, the reality is if you're not going to do some prep, your scores are probably not going to change a whole lot. PSATs to SATs do tend to go up a bit, but if you just say, oh, I'm going to keep taking it and keep taking it, but not doing any prep, probably not going to change a whole lot. There's some great free resources through the College Board, which are the SAT people. They have an arrangement with the Khan Academy, which is an online tutoring source. And if you sign up for that, you can get individualized online tutoring prep. We also have, through our own technology, through Method Test Prep, which is another online source to just help you with the skills. Something also very similar, very simple, is the SAT question of the day. I think you can download the app and you'll get a question every day on your phone, and it just helps you get used to how those questions are answered. So we've talked a lot about standardized testing, but I also want to say that that is just one piece of the puzzle, okay? Many of the larger universities, just because of the number of applicants, they will have to use standardized tests, but there really is a movement away from standardized testing. We've included a link to fairtest.org, and those are schools that require no standardized testing, no ACTs, no SATs. They will not penalize you for not sending them. They've just decided that's not a really great indicator to how successful you're going to be on the college level. So it's a great website, and you will be surprised by some of the schools that are on there. If you haven't registered, if you didn't take the SATs or you haven't gone on the College Board yet, the website for registering is right there. Very simple process. Our high school code, which you're going to be using time and time again, is 330500. We've just included that when the tests are given here. But it's not a big deal if you take it in Carmel or Danbury or whatever, but probably more comfortable here. Anyone that is a classified student or has an IEP or a 504, when it comes to standardized testings, you have to apply to those testing organizations for your accommodations, be that extra time or questions read or something like that, okay? And that's a lengthy process, so please let us know that, let's discuss that, in the beginning. Mrs. Murray, our school psychologist, has to submit paperwork to the College Board and the ACT people, and then you get, in most cases, you get approved, but it does take some time. And one of the pieces of the application that is completely up to students is after you have the SAT scores or ACT scores that you want sent, you have to go back on those websites and request that they be sent to the schools you're applying to. They don't want them to come from the high school as we used to send them. They want them directly from the testing centers. Okay.
Okay, so one of the things we've been discussing this week in our group guidance sessions is the fact that this process has to come from the student. It's very important that they're the ones who are motivated to do it, that their reasons for wanting to apply to college are coming from them. So one of the things that we had them complete this week was a self-assessment. So what are their reasons for wanting to go to college? Why is that something that's important to them? So it's important that you have those conversations. A lot of students sort of go into this process saying, well, I have to apply to college because everybody goes to college and that's just something that I have to do after high school. But there has to be more than that. So really listen to your sons and daughters and see what their reason is. Why do they want to go to college? They need to be motivated through this process so that they'll go through it and you don't have to nag them, and we don't have to nag them. We hate nagging. I kind of like nagging actually, but I would prefer not to. So there's a lot of different paths which we encourage students to consider. So college is one path, a 4-year college, a 2-year college, technical or a trade school is another option for students. Some students go right into the workforce after high school. Some students plan to join the military, others consider a gap year. All of those are good options depending on what your son or daughter is looking for. So again, these conversations are important for us to have. We want to make sure that what they're doing is authentic for them, rather than being told, this is what you have to do next. We want it really to be coming from them, because then they'll really own the process. So we start the process after we finish up that self-assessment. We walk students through 2 options for completing some college research. We tend to use the Naviance website, which your students have had access to since they were freshmen. The reason why we use the Naviance website is because it allows your sons and daughters to compare their data, their SATs and GPAs to other students from Brewster High School who have applied to colleges and been successful. So we walk them through the Family Connection website, we show them how to do college searches, we have them complete something called the Game Plan Survey, which is basically a quick informational survey for us that says what their plan is, if their plan is to go to college, what criteria are sort of emerging as being important for them. So once they've completed those game plans, we show them how to complete a college search in Naviance. There are 2 ways to do this in Naviance. You should ask your sons and daughters. We're doing it this week, so hopefully they were paying attention. A traditional college search they can do either in Naviance or on the College Board website, where basically they're defining their criteria, and all of the colleges that result are schools that meet all of those criteria. The other way of doing this is something called a supermatch college search, and that allows a student to rank their criteria, and then they would get a wider list of schools to choose from. So really, any of these options works because eventually they're going to come up with a list of schools to begin to whittle down. Okay? For anybody who needs a password reset, they can do that right on the website. The counselors can reset passwords, secretaries in the guidance office can reset passwords. And also remember that as parents, you have access to your own accounts in this site. You can see any of the features that your sons and daughters can see. The only thing you can't do is add or delete colleges from their list because they have to do that themselves. So when we think about college research, we are thinking of a lot of different factors of applying to college. So in general, we're talking about the ability of your son or daughter to get into a college, and we talk about this in terms of a college being a reach, range, or a safety school, also called a probable admit. That's like the nicer way of saying it. And we encourage students to look at this from a financial perspective as well as an academic perspective, okay? Your son and daughter might be able to get into a college, but if it costs $50,000 that you don't have, they can't go there. So they really need this financial safety. It's very important that you have that conversation with them. We also talk about other factors that they may want to consider. So these would be things like location. How far away from home are you willing to go? The cost. Again, I mentioned that was an important one. What size of school are you comfortable going to? Do you want to stay at a small school about the size of Brewster High School where you can really get to know people and make relationships with professors? Or do you want to branch out and see something bigger and maybe have access to some more unique opportunities? For some students, major is a very important criteria. They leave high school knowing exactly what they want to study, and it's important that that major is available to them at the college they'll end up attending. And for some schools, for some students, setting is important. So do they want to be right in the middle of a city? Are they more comfortable being a suburb or in a rural environment? And these are all factors that will sort of work through with your sons and daughters through the year. One of the easy things to do, and we'll touch on this later, is to visit local colleges. Even if they have no intention of applying to a school like WestConn, you could pop over there in 15 minutes just to get a sense of what that size of a school would be like, because that will inform whether or not that size of school is good to look at for a school in New York City or a school in Boston. So those are some ways to get a handle on those criteria. And we really encourage students to look beyond Brewster's most popular schools. You know, every year we see patterns. Kids are applying to the same schools as their friends, which is great. You know, it's nice to get feedback from friends, but this really needs to be a process that they're owning and that they're completing independently of their friends. So we really encourage them to look at schools that are a good match for them, not just schools that they've heard of from parents or friends as a good school that they might want to think about. So there's a lot of ways to get information about colleges. Obviously, online is one of the most important ways. We also have a college career room that we keep stocked with information books. We have college reps come to visit us. We have over 100 representatives come every year to speak to students. Those are important opportunities for your sons and daughters to take advantage of. Online sites, Naviance, the College Board website, there are 2 links on here for College Factual and College Scorecard. And those are all websites that give you detailed information about different colleges. Okay, so the first thing to do, you're obviously not going to go run out and visit 3,000 schools. If you do, take me with you, because I would have fun doing that. So you're not going to visit 3,000 schools. The way to whittle them down is by checking the websites. Okay, make sure you like it at first glance. If you don't like the school based on what they're presenting on the website, chances are you won't like it when you step foot on the campus. We also encourage students to reach out to alumni who've attended a college in the past, and we can give them access to those resources. And then we also encourage students to attend local college fairs. There's one coming up at Fox Lane High School in April. There's an online college fair that's done year-round at collegeweeklive.com. And then there are a number of college fairs that your sons and daughters can attend in the fall. There's a local one at the Danbury Mall, one at the Westchester County Center, and another at Yorktown High School.
So as has been mentioned before, visiting is one of the most important and critical things that you can do. And in order to beat some of the stress in the fall, to take some time to start having these conversations at home, as we had mentioned, And after the meeting with your son or daughter's counselor, it's important to think about where to start and where to start looking. So as Ms. McCann mentioned, WestCon, right down the road, 10 or 15 minutes, is a good place to start. But we're in a kind of great spot for you to visit anything from rural schools, state schools, private schools, community college, trade schools, beauty schools, you name it, within an hour vicinity. So if everybody's sort of, you don't even know where to start, we can help you do a consolidated search where you don't even really have to go too far or spend a lot of time in the car to start. One important thing is to kind of structure some of what, after you go, what you've seen. So somebody taking notes, dictating notes in the phone now that there's easy apps and Siri to kind of do all the hard work. But to keep track, after a while, all these schools start to mesh and the stress starts to get to everybody. And so it's important to kind of keep notes as you go along, from the visits. So after you've gone to a few, just like any of us who have test-driven a car, you start to realize what you're looking for and what's important. And so that the next few schools you go to, you're either looking for something or you want to make sure that that part of the campus is something that your son or daughter is going to enjoy, whether it's sports, clubs, activities, being close to a city or not. And so the more you visit, the more you kind of start to look at this, the things that would look like the right fit for your son or daughter. The best time to go is when the classes are in session. Part of this process, even as counselors, we often try and get out on the campuses when we have the opportunity and go on the tours just like you guys. And the best thing you can do is people watch and kind of get a sense. Do I see myself fitting in here? And that other opportunity when classes are in session and you're taking tours is that you get to ask the tour guides the real important questions, whether it's about food or the housing or their classes, how they make friends, what the campus life is like. Bumping into students, they're happy to share everything, good or bad, about the school. Whether when you go to the open houses and there's a presentation, you're going to get the college's PR version. When you're on a tour, you're going to ask that tour guide, and they're pretty honest. And some of the questions that I like to ask is, was this your #1 school? What other types of schools did you apply to? If you could do it all over again, would you have chosen this school? What made you choose this school? Because it sparks a conversation that might give you either ideas of other schools that are just like it, or kind of give you some insight to kind of the high or low lights that at least that person's perspective has. Again, the critical time to go is any time between now and early May before the students graduate. But again, if you're stuck and your schedule only allows over the summer, anything is sort of better than not taking any visits at all. The mechanics are, you really don't want to visit more than 1 to schools per day because it gets daunting, gets tiring, and those things kind of weigh on your ability to see the school as a whole when people are hungry or they're tired of driving, or the car is just getting too crowded. We try and say visit 1 or 2. And then if we can hit the next slide. While you're there, the best thing to do is all these schools on their websites, as you're looking at them, that was mentioned before, is to sign up for these guided tours, information sessions, or open houses. Everything's done pretty much electronically, and you're kind of locked into some dates. So although right now you're thinking, oh, spring break, I have off, Johnny has off from school, that'd be a perfect time, you should get on the websites now and start kind of booking yourself, otherwise you'll see that they're full, and all those plans of driving to visit family down south and hit a few schools on the way, won't happen. And yeah, you might get to the campus, but you're only going to get to do the spin around, and you're not going to get all the information that's presented by the schools and the students. So the information sessions, you're gonna get a lot out of. And again, you're gonna hear things that might interest you and know about to ask for other colleges to see if they have those things that were highlighted. You want to see the main areas, which they're going to take you through on the guided tours. You want to ask about the social life, what type of facilities are there, whether they're athletic or the library is a super important, hopefully for most students, a super important aspect of their academics. Again, talk to students, and sometimes they do give you you can give yourself a self-guided tour, a virtual tour if you need be. But most of the time, if you can get physically on the campus, I think it's just going to make more sense and you're going to get more out of that.
Okay, so as Mrs. Jones mentioned earlier, we'll really get into the mechanics a lot at the very end of this year with the juniors, and also a lot in the senior year. Really, September, we hit them with 3 quick group guidance sessions where we go through from start to finish, how do you apply to college. But just very quickly, in the junior year, your sons and daughters can be thinking about teachers who can write them letters of recommendation. Before I get to that slide, let me tell you about the slide that's on the screen. So first, we're going to talk about types of admission. So we talk to students about this in terms of how you would apply to a college. So the types of admissions that you see up there, the applications, a rolling admission just basically means the sooner you apply, the sooner they'll review your application. It's basically a first come, first served basis. So if you ever see a rolling admission deadline, we encourage students to apply as early as possible. Some schools will open up their rolling applications as early as October 1st. And the sooner you can get the application in there, the better your chances of getting in, because there's many more spots for a college to fill at that point. The longer you wait, the fewer spots are left to fill, so it becomes more competitive. There are some popular schools. A lot of the SUNY schools do rolling admission. UConn does rolling admission, and they typically close out their class in early December. So it's really important, if you see rolling, to get on the application quickly. The regular decision deadline is just sort of the most typical application deadline you'll see. So the college sets a deadline, typically January 1st, January 15th, sometime February, sometimes later in the year. Student applies by that date. They typically hear back from the college sometime in late March or April, and then they'll have until May 1st to make a decision. Early decision is an application where your son or daughter will apply to the school early, usually December 1st or November 1st or November 15th. They'll find out a decision from the college typically before January 1st. Early decision is a binding agreement. So if they are accepted under an early decision plan, they have to go to that college. They'll have to withdraw their other applications and commit to that one school. Because of this, it can be a little bit easier to get in under an early decision plan. So reserve this if there's one school that your son or daughter absolutely knows they love and want to attend. Applying early might give them a slight advantage. Early action, on the other hand, is a non-binding agreement. So they still apply early, typically November 1 or November 15th are the deadlines. They'll hear back before January 1st, but they still have until May 1st to make a decision as to whether or not they want to attend the school. So they can apply to other schools, get financial aid packages. Because this is such a nice option, this can be slightly more competitive if a son or daughter applies early action. So if you have questions or concerns about the best way for your son or daughter to apply, we'll be having those conversations with them in September to let them know really you should be thinking about early action, or you should pull back and wait for regular decision to have a better chance of getting in. Regardless of how they're applying, make sure the application is in by the deadline. That is so important. I mean, the application is the first thing that a college is going to see about your son or daughter, and if they're getting an application a couple days late, that's the first impression they're getting. Okay. So now teacher recommendations. So this year your son and daughter can begin to think about some teachers who know them well. Okay, most colleges are looking for 2 academic references in addition to the counselor reference. And these can come from teachers who have had your son and daughter typically as a sophomore or as a junior, who know your son and daughter well in the classroom, who can speak to their academic strengths. There's really no need to have a teacher who knows you in the classroom, but really is your class advisor, so they can speak to you about all of your extracurriculars. The most important thing from a teacher recommendation is the academic reference. So your sons or daughters should be choosing teachers who can speak about their strength in the classroom. It doesn't have to be a class where they got an A. It could be a class where they worked really, really, really hard and were very persistent. And in the end, that is sort of going to be reflected in their grade. So have them be thinking about teachers this year who they may be able to speak to about letters of recommendation. The counselor recommendation we will send as long as we have what's called a junior autobiography. This is the document that we'll give to them later this year. And basically this just gives us the backstory that we may know or may not remember from your son or daughter, and also gives sort of your permission, your son's or daughter's permission to include certain aspects about their experience in high school in the letter. So this is really important for us to get. We want to make sure that the picture we're painting of your child is the picture they want us to paint. So that's why we ask for that document. So teacher recommendations is one piece of the application process. The counselor recommendation transcript as well is an important piece that comes from our office, and that will be done via Naviance. And then the other things for them to consider are any special talents. So if your son or daughter is thinking of playing sport in college, that's important for us to know. If they're thinking of going into performing art or a studio type of art or visual art, those are important things for us to know because the application process is slightly different for those types of programs. And we would have to just include that piece in considering the application process for them as well. This is also true for any students who are thinking of applying to one of the service academies. The application process for that is different than the typical application process. So we'll have to know that early so we can begin that process earlier. Okay, so I'll do financial aid also. Okay, so filing for financial aid is often how students are going to be eligible for any money from the college. We have a presentation in late September that we'll have for all parents where we go through the documentation that you'll need in order to apply for financial aid. There's two primary documents. The first is the FAFSA, that's a free application for federal student aid, and that is basically what allows colleges to award the money that they have. Okay, so that can be filed starting in October 1st. Some colleges also require a document called the CSS profile, and we encourage you to fill this out only if a college requires it, not if they recommend it. It's asking for much more specific information about assets that you wouldn't want to disclose unless the college is specifically asking for it. And you'll be able to go right on the College Board's website to see whether or not a school requires this document or if they're recommending it or don't require it at all. One of the things that we've talked about this week with your students is that you can't automatically eliminate a college just based on the price that they're showing. One of the features in Naviance that you have access to is a way to view what the typical price is for a student based on the income level of the parent. So you can change that in Naviance and really see based on your income what sort of financial aid you could expect to get from any college. So don't automatically eliminate a school based on just what they're advertising as their cost, because oftentimes students are paying much less than that. And financial aid could drastically change that overall net number that you have to contribute. We have information about scholarships available on our website now. Some of those are available for juniors to apply to, so they can certainly look at that resources page on our website. For scholarship information, Mrs. Jones mentioned the Raise Me site, which will have students update this year. And Raise Me is basically a micro scholarship website. They earn scholarship money for specific colleges based on the small things they're doing each year in high school. So that will be helpful as well. And then we just encourage them to keep those profiles updated, something that we'll do with them at the end of this year.
So in closing, to kind of review some of the timeline for the junior year, now should start the conversations and the researching. So the behind the scenes, where are we gonna go? What are we looking for? Start to talk about the visits. The next thing up after you get our letter, which provides you with a number to call, one of the guidance secretaries who can take a look at all of our calendars and work with you with your schedules to set up the counselor, parent, and student meetings. If you have specific questions beforehand, and just kind of check with your student, make sure they filled out that game plan. The more information we have kind of prior to that meeting, especially if you have some specific questions, we could do a little bit of background beforehand. It's always nice to kind of, if you do know what you're coming in with, we could do some research so we have that ready for you. And then also if there's anything we can't answer in those meetings, we'll help provide you with tools or look some stuff up and get back to your son or daughter. The next thing to talk about, as we had mentioned prior, is which standardized test and when. Again, Ms. McCann kind of mentioned that you may feel most comfortable taking it here at Brewster High School. When it comes to testing and all kind of the anxiety and hype that goes into it, your best bet is to try and register and feel comfortable walking into your own home school. Obviously, in the worst case scenario, you can take it at any local school, but it certainly feels like home when you're walking in these doors, sitting down, knowing where you're going to take a big high stakes test. Obviously, we spoke about visiting and the junior autobiography, which we'll provide your students towards the spring. This is called a junior autobiography because we hope to have it by the end of junior year, going into the beginning of senior year, because it helps us, again, write our letters. And due to our caseloads and time to detail with all of the tasks in the fall of scheduling and helping your son or daughter get situated with the whole college process, the sooner we have that information, the sooner we're able to start writing some letters with a lot of thought and care that we put into them. Students will continue with our help to update the Raise Me profile and follow different colleges. And we have a link to our website that's on here, which provides tons of resources for almost, it answers a lot of just frequently asked questions, visiting that, where to access those test prep sites, what are all the sites for college research, where do I find scholarships, what do colleges look for in, the student essay. So a lot of tips and tricks are right on the website. In the fall of senior year, this is when, the more you do on the front end, you'll see that it'll feel much more comfortable come fall to finalize your lists of schools. So in the fall, where are you applying? What are those dates? What's the strategy? Early action, early decision, regular decision. There's a parent meeting in the first few weeks of school in mid-September where we go over the whole overview of the mechanics of how to apply and what supports are available. It's also important to encourage your son or daughter to attend those first 3 meetings in the fall because although the information is always available on the web, it's nice to kind of walk through together the whole process in small group guidance. Financial aid meeting is in late September. That'll be on the district calendar. That's where we have the financial aid. Someone from outside of here, from higher ed, comes to give a whole overview of the financial aid presentation. Does a really nice job being comprehensive and takes a lot of questions and time at the end. And then you start filing for the FAFSA. So that starts and opens up on October 1st. So that's important, the sooner the better to kind of get that squared away, filing for the FAFSA. There's college and question sessions for parents in the fall. Those are also on the district calendar and on our own guidance website. So where you can drop in, I forget, usually it's like a Friday morning or Tuesday morning, and just come in and sort of ask any questions that you might have or concerns that you might have with your son or daughter. If you feel like it's best served with an individual email, call, or meeting, obviously you can set that up anytime as well. There's tons of application workshops for students, so those days are important. If you feel like you're at home sort of nagging, we feel like we're nagging, we offer these workshops where students can drop in during their free time in their senior year, and we're around sort of hovering and supporting and answering those questions as they come up, just filling out the Common App or any of the applications. If a student sort of gets their test results back early in the fall, again, is a better time to start thinking about retesting. Hopefully you've done some test prep in some way to ready yourself for the next examination, and keep visiting. So some of the students might, have decided they're going to change their major, change their plan. So you keep visiting throughout the fall. It doesn't keep you off the hook if you're visiting now from hitting the road in the fall. And then the students are really completing the application and supplemental materials. And it's really important, and we can't stress it enough, to allow them to drive the process. And that starts with the application. If you find that you have to kind of get on the computer and email us for passwords and all that stuff, kind of something that isn't right. Maybe they're not ready to take that next step, because that allows them to build the autonomy for their future and ask questions and kind of handle things on their own. And we're available as supports and resources. Again, there's workshops, individual meetings, and they can always reach us. So after the completed applications, you get all the materials together, the students will request the official transcripts, and then we're sort of processing the applications out to the college. They'll ask for those letters of rec, they'll provide whatever information the teacher or the counselor might need, and then request the transcripts. And after that, then we start really looking into those scholarships. That's when you're kind of out of the dark a little bit and can start looking into scholarships, because that's usually a question we get from students, and we like to say, kind of worry about the application. Once that hits, we'll kind of advise you for research scholarship research questions. So now that's kind of the end of our presentation. We'll take questions from you guys, so just raise your hand, kind of talk a little bit louder. You know what? I think the March SAT that is here. It was just added, so it might have not made the presentation when we were kind of writing it prior to this break. Sorry.
So the link that is here to the college board links right to their registration date and deadline, and that'll show you where it is, where the test is offered, and
prep classes we offer to students.
and when our SAT prep class is offered. So the SAT prep classes that are offered here at the school are not done as part of Green High School. They're done by outside companies who do their states. So they advertise, and we have some of that information up in our guidance office for students to grab and get access to. You can also search on their website or just do a Google search for a test prep for SAT University High School, and those will pop up. We don't endorse any of them, even if they're offered here, we're not endorsing them as a program. So those typically are offered starting now, depending on when they're planning to take the SAT. You can find crash courses for maybe just over a weekend, or some extended courses that they can take over like a 2-month period. Any other questions? Great, yeah. So the question was regarding the college essay?
So the question was regarding the college essay. When are students being helped through that process? Typically that happens in the senior year. So any student who's taking a Dutchess English class as a senior or just an English 12 class, the first half of that class is writing and revising the college essay. Students who are taking an AP Language or AP Lit class won't get that direct instruction on how to write a college essay, but the teacher will be there for support. The Common App typically releases their essay prompts over the summer or late in the spring, so we won't even know what they are. And once those become available over the summer, a student can begin to craft an essay, and then they'll get the support in the classroom as a senior.
Yes.
For role and admission, typically when is the decision made if the application is acceptable?
I didn't hear the second part of the question.
If the application date is October 1 and enroll in addition, when is the certificate date?
You know, it's sort of difficult to answer only because it depends on numbers. But, you know, I've found that sometimes because rolling admission doesn't have a deadline, students can tend to put that sort of on the back burner, and that's the last place it should be. So, you know, it's usually within a month to 6 weeks, but again, if a school gets kind of bombarded, it can be longer. But, you know, all the materials have to be there, the SAT scores, the teacher letters, our letter, and then they'll review the application. Other questions?
All right, thank you so much for coming out.